Well, Yankee Doodle, hello there, everyone. Welcome back to the Proof of Sound podcast, your favorite podcast where we don't discuss birds, but we do have one for a bird logo anyway. Yeah. I'm Reed, and allow me to introduce some of my favorite gentle dudes to talk music with. The former hardcore kid and high priest of the Church of Pat Flynn, Kyle Phelps.
Hey, everybody.
He is the classic rock historian, but more importantly, the Bobo who honks, Mr. Jake Smith.
I am the Bobo who honks.
And rounding us out, one of the few people in the world to watch and listen as Kanye West walked around an arena in a puffy red jacket, Mr. Devan Donda Cooley.
That's me. I'm here. I'm back from Atlanta.
He survived.
He survived.
Kanye does have a stocking over his head, though. That's weird.
Yeah. Devan, I do want to hear all about that experience, but first, if you're listening and happen to miss out on the first episode of the Proof of Sound podcast, or maybe you just need a refresher on what we're here to do, we are four likable gents who get together to talk about the music we just can't get out of our heads, while also engaging in a title track discussion that could be a music topic, an in-depth album review, a guest interview, a whole playlist of things. You can listen in at any of your preferred streaming services, from Apple Music to Spotify to even YouTube, by just searching Proof of Sound Podcast. You'll know you found us when you see the Blue Jay as our cover art. Why? I don't know. It just looks really, really cool. You can also keep up with the show and join in on our discussions by following us on Instagram and Twitter at Proof of Sound Pod. That's Proof of Sound P-O-D. Speaking of, during our first episode, Kyle and I both revealed the pivotal role that Green Day shaped on our early music tastes. However, there was a bit of a generational contention over what we considered the quote-unquote best Green Day song. In an effort to settle that very serious but very important debate in a totally impartial way, we put up a poll on our Proof of Sound Pod Instagram to let our followers tell us definitively what was the better Green Day song. The 90s anthem, Welcome to Paradise, from the band's seminal 1994 album Dookie, or the operatic pop-punk opus Jesus of Suburbia from the equally seminal American Idiot, released in 2004. What were the results of that poll, everybody?
I begrudgingly admit that Jesus of Suburbia very much lost that poll.
Very much lost. I didn't see the final results, but I think like 6, 7, 8 more people probably voted for Welcome to Paradise.
It's because it's the better song.
And you
can hear
can't
all
argue it anymore. I probably said on the podcast that Jesus of Suburbia was my favorite Green Day song. I did say that. I don't even know if that's true. Like, I might prefer Brain Stew or Hitching a Ride or Longview, but I just said it because, I'm on a podcast, so they pay me to say things.
You're getting paid?
Wait, what?
Y'all didn't.
Oh,
Be
man.
quiet. Jake, you got to keep that calm, man. I mean,
We
can talk about it later.
My thing is, like, song aside, the name Jesus of Suburbia sounds like something a 14-year-old, like, angsty kid would have made their song title.
And it worked.
And it worked.
Yeah, perfectly.
Welcome to Paradise is on an album called Dookie.
That's different. Different time.
It's different, same immaturity, different time.
Yeah.
Either way, I loved the strong reactions that people had to that poll. I appreciated it. With that acknowledgement of Kyle's superior listening skills out of the way, the 90s kids, you guys rule, we get it. Devan Cooley, I want to hear all about your reporting from the stands at the Kanye West Donda listening event at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta last Thursday, July 22nd. I want to say Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta because I just feel like that's what the headlines have said over and over about this event. Anyway, what did you think? What were your thoughts?
Honestly, it was surreal. It was not at all the concert that I expected to be the first one to go attend after or still in the midst of the COVID pandemic. I haven't been to a concert in a good solid year and a half, almost 2 years now. And so to go to something like that was genuinely crazy. A huge thank you to my friend Chris, who hooked me up with a ticket to that. We did a quick little road trip over there the other day. It was really insane. And I called it a concert a minute ago. Don't know if I would call it a concert. We heard the recording of the album. There was no live performance per se. It was played at 1 million decibels directly in front of my face. So there's this really big difference between some sort of actual album review versus the review of the event, because you could not really understand what was going on. The acoustics were pretty rough, but I might have sailed the high seas and heard some recordings of the event since then. And so some parts of it have made more sense. But yeah, the event itself was crazy. It was packed. It was the biggest building I've ever been in my life, being there at Mercedes-Benz. Just surrounded by people. It was great for the event itself, but also just like the first event back at anything like that.
Yeah.
But it was supposed to start at one point, and it started about an hour and 45 minutes after that. It was a lot of waiting, watching the screensaver basically on the big screen at the top, just be like, oh, nope, this is it. No, it's not.
Now,
That's just the Home Depot logo again.
Please tell me it was like the DVD menu.
It wasn't even that. No.
Trying to wait and see if it hit the corner of the screen.
No, it was basically us just waiting, and then the screen would go black and we'd be like, oh, and then no, it's just the Mercedes-Benz logo. And I was like, oh, man, almost. But, and then finally, we'd been sitting there for over an hour and a half waiting for this to start. I mean, people were getting kicked out for smoking left and right, that kind of thing. We're all just kind of waiting for it. And then all the lights went out and all the screens went out. And it was like, oh, it's about to happen. And then the music just hits you, like I said, at 1,000,000 decibels. You feel it in every part of you. And the first track in at least that event, I don't know exactly what the first track is going to be on the final album, if we ever get one. But the first track really like hits you with this like chorus of voices, and that really comes through so well when you hear it at such a loud event like that. And so it was a great kickoff for that. But yeah, it just takes off. The crowd would lose their mind every time, like the bass would really hit, where the drum beat would kick in. There were a lot of Yeezy chants. Part of that first song is still going, and then you just see a spotlight in the center, and then you see Kanye just like walking out in all red, just walking around, and that was the event. He stood in the center for the first few minutes, and the music played, and then he would kind of walk around a little bit, and the spotlight wouldn't really follow him. It would just get bigger. And so it was very centered. There was one video
like that's on
the
par.
entire time. Yeah.
This
and
is
so,
a very Kanye experience.
Yeah, it was very, very on brand for Kanye, whatever that brand is right now. And that was the interesting part was, what if anyone watched the live event on Apple, that's great. We didn't see that. There was no video feed. Like the camera we could see moving around him from the cable up top, but we never saw that feed at all. So it was just him in the middle. And so it was like super, super minimalistic when it came to the visuals. It was just on a massive scale. So, a lot of trying to get a good picture here and there, but you're at a football stadium. So, you still feel like you're a mile away at times.
Following like a tiny red dot on a white. Yeah.
But it was great. It was really cool. They played the album all the way through one time. He walked out and that was it. And it was kind of strange because I thought they would play it again, or I thought he would come back out because we were like, all right, that was about 40 minutes of music. He's had some longer albums in the past. And about 10 minutes later, the first track started again, and it was clear like, hey, the lights are on and everything. That was it. And like I said, it was at such a loud volume that there's a verse that Jay-Z comes in on. We didn't know. We didn't know it until after the fact because it was just so loud. And we got to the end, and we're like, all right, that was it. And then somebody was like, wait, that was Jay-Z. And we were like, where? What? In what part of that album?
Yeah.
We didn't hear it. But yeah, just the visuals of it, to be there and see something like that was such a spectacle while at the same time nothing really happened in the center.
Yeah.
It was really crazy. It was very on brand for Kanye, I think.
Wow. And so he literally just walked around while this album played. Like there was no,
Yeah.
I thought when I was seeing visuals of it, I was like, is he going to like interpretive dance to it? Like what?
Yeah.
Yeah. His
No.
role is just to be there.
No dancing.
Wow.
Every now and then, when it would be a verse that he was like really passionate about, you'd see him like throw a punch, that sort of thing. Or there was,
Oh, that's so sad.
I know. Yeah. One of the tracks, called "I'm Losing My Family" was the one that you've heard a lot or seen a lot, like in the blogs about it, where it's pretty straightforward. It's I'm losing my family, and the drama that's gone on there with him. And so at one point, like he just like sat down on his knees for like the rest of that track.
Whoa.
And it's a pretty decently long track.
Yeah.
And so he just kind of like, I guess like soaked that in, to deal with it outside of the show, and then to, have it played in front of, 50,000 people is different. But yeah, it was a surreal experience for sure. Glad I got to be there because one, who knows when the album's going to come out, but then two, this version of the album is very different than whatever is going to be released later on. So that was really, really cool.
Totally. While he toils away in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for that, Devan. Now, we're about to move on to the music we've been listening to since the last episode. But before we do that, one last thing. One of the albums that Jake highlighted last week was Japanese Breakfast's magnificent third studio album, Jubilee. I think we were all pretty hot on it for sure. But Kyle, you not only got to see Jay Brecky live, you also got to meet her. Tell us about that. What happened?
Yeah. So the day of the show, she at our local record store, Seasick Records, had a signing. You could purchase the book or the record and get it signed. So I got the book because I've heard nothing but great things about her memoir.
Crying in H Mark?
Yep, that's it. So yeah, stood in line and I was thinking of all these things I was going to say to her, and finally get up there and just wussed out and was just like, "Thank you so much." But I did get to say, like, "Hey, I saw your old band in a basement on the other side of town like 8 years ago," and she said to that, "I don't even remember that." So that's pretty cool.
You guys are best friends for sure.
Yeah. But no, so much like Devan, this was my first show back since COVID. I went back and looked at, my Instagram or whatever to see what the last show I went to was, and it was Pedro the Lion towards the end of 2019. So it's been a long time since I'd been to a show. And she blew the roof off of the place. It was an incredible show. But two kind of crazy things happened at the show. The first, so she opened with Paprika. Great song. But towards after the little intro, she has that first cymbal drum hit. So she hits that, all the power goes out. Like just all the lights, all the sound, power goes out. And so everyone just kind of stood there confused for a little bit. And power didn't come back on. So finally, the guy that plays sax came up and was like, "Okay, she's going to play some acoustic songs now." So she played This House from the last record. And, that song slowly builds up to like a crescendo. And right as she hit that crescendo, all the power came back on.
What?
So lights came back on, like the mic immediately came back on. It was incredible. So yeah, they sounded great. The show is great. I had forgotten how good of a performer she is. So they played their set, decent set, great set. Went off stage, came back for the encore, which first off, it's 2021. Can we stop with the leaving the stage and coming back for the encore?
Snaps to
right.
Snaps.
Yeah, just play it.
Yeah.
But anyway, nothing against Japanese Breakfast. That's everybody.
Yeah.
But she called up two complete strangers to the stage, and there was a proposal at the show.
What?
Their
Okay.
first date was when she played here the last time 3 years ago. And the guy that did the proposal knocked it out of the park. I don't think there was a dry eye in the place. But yeah, great show to go back to.
Dude, talk about, return to live music 2021, like a magical power coming back and then the proposal. That's insane.
Yeah. It was great.
Yeah, man, I loved hearing about that experience as much as I think you maybe, got to experience it firsthand. That's awesome. So it is time, I think, to move on to What's on Cue. This is the section of the podcast where we each discuss the artists, songs, albums, etc. that we have just been hooked on lately. Now, let's acknowledge something. We were really ambitious last episode, if we want to call it that. We each talked about 3 albums. So that's 12 total albums that you, our listeners, listened to us prattle on about. A heartfelt thank you if you held on for all 45 minutes of that segment. But today is a new dawn in the Proof of Sound podcast, and we'll each just be talking 1, maybe 2 recommendations. In this case, less is more. So, with that important disclaimer out of the way, let's get into it, I think. Kyle, tell me all about the Feverchild EP. Is it feverish?
It is. So this one was given to me by a friend. Never heard about them. The only thing they've released is this self-titled EP. All I was told is it was a throwback, but my friend didn't tell me how, why, what kind of throwback. These guys are young, and they're from Ghent, Belgium. And they're straight up playing some like 1998 Sunny Day Real Estate type indie rock. I dare say emo, but I think Sunny Day Real Estate kind of swears off the term. But yeah, if you're in the mood for some throwback late 90s, early 2000s emo, I can't suggest the Feverchild self-titled EP enough.
Yeah, when I jumped in on this, I only listened to it for the first time today, so I don't want to go into too much detail on one listen, but like Kyle, I was immediately struck by the Sunny Day Real Estate similarity. That was easily the first band that kind of jumped to my mind. I think it's great. I think, it's like 12 minutes long, very quick burst of that sound. If you're looking to kind of get that fix, it's quick. It's reminiscent of some of the same sounds that Fiddlehead, which we talked about last week, are kind of hitting on. But instead of veering, like Fiddlehead kind of veers more towards the pop punk side of things, they kind of veer more towards what we would call emo, what Sunny Day Real Estate maybe wouldn't call emo, but what we would call emo. So if you're looking for that, this is fantastic. 12 great minutes of music. I listened to it on the drive over to Devan's place where we're recording right now. So great thing.
Love it.
Check it out.
You got a standout track?
I actually don't. Like he said, it's so short. It's hard to pick just one. I did like, maybe it's my penchant for late 90s, early 2000s stuff. I love sneaking like movie or TV clips, like quotes into a song, and they have an instrumental track that does that. So great callback to that kind of stuff. But no, I don't have one. The whole thing's just great.
Yeah, 12 minutes. You can listen to it. Yeah. Love it.
They're shorter than most Rush songs.
This is true. All right, Kyle, tell me about Dave. We're all alone in this together.
Yeah, so I'd like to think of myself as a somewhat studied person of British hip-hop and rap. But of all people, Dave was actually suggested to be by my wife. I love Dave. I've loved everything he's done before this. Also, if you've never watched his Brit Awards performance, I suggest looking that up on YouTube because it's one of the most powerful performances I've ever seen in my life. Wow. I watch it at least once a week. It's incredible. But yeah, I loved his last album, Psychodrama. I'm going to say this one doesn't really do it for me. A couple of reasons. I think I love what Dave has to say. And it doesn't, I'm not taking it lightly that I'm a white man reviewing an album about being black. But his songs sometimes are so heavy and so serious that you want just like a windows down bop to listen to. Mm-hmm. And he does try that a couple of times on this album, but it just doesn't hit for me for whatever reason. Also, there's a couple of lyrics that are just straight up corny, but it's not really his as much as he's got some guests. Not Stormzy. He's got some other guests on the album with some straight up corny lyrics. But yeah.
Has Dave had bops in the past, but this one's just a more serious?
No, so like he kind of got some flack for that his stuff was so heavy that it was kind of hard to listen to in long stretches. So I think he tried a couple of different styles, in British hip hop, the Caribbean beat's a big thing. And he did that a couple of times and it's almost there, but it may just be me, but it just doesn't click for me.
Okay.
I don't know. For me, I hate saying this because this is such a horrible admission, but I just have such a difficult time getting past the British accent when I listen to rap. I don't know what it is, and that's totally not a fair criticism, and I should be shamed for that. But when I listen to it, I just can't help but think of it all as comedy. And so when you have an album like this, I listened to the first 5 or 6 tracks today. So when you have an album like this that's so heavy, but then the accent is making me laugh, I feel bad as I'm listening to it. I'm like, I shouldn't be laughing. Yeah. But it's like he's talking about a bottle of water. And I just can't wrap my mind around it. And it's terrible and it's a shortcoming. And I know it's bad, but that's just my experience with it.
Yeah.
Listeners, if you've got a British rapper that will take, Jake's hate of the accent off, like what the one that should that's the key for him. Let us know.
And I'll say one, I think, Jake, you can agree with this. We've briefly talked about it in the past, and we can save it in depth for another episode. But I tend to not listen to lyrics very often. But Dave kind of commands you to listen to his lyrics. And I think that plays into it being so heavy. Probably also why it's so jarring for you for the accent if you're going to be commanded to listen to these lyrics.
It reminds me in some ways of like the rap that I really love from the early 90s, specifically like Illmatic by Nas, where it's just very narrative driven and lyrically driven, and you have to be locked in because the beat's just going to stay the same the whole time. And you got to be, he's commanding your attention with his lyrics. And so I want to do that. But then earlier I told y'all it reminds me of Jermaine Clement from Flight of the Conchords, like the way that he's phrasing things, and I I'm sorry, don't come after me, listeners.
Yeah.
I know it's a shortcoming. I'm working on it. If you've got recommendations, send it to us on Twitter. I'd love to have them.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Well, thank you for the balanced take, Kyle, for sure. Jake, I am so excited to hear you talk about Clairo's Sling, because I know that Clairo's first album was a big one for you, right?
Love Immunity. That was a great album.
Yeah.
Came out 2019, I think. One of my favorite albums from that year for sure. This new one is, I'm going to just go ahead and make a bold declaration here and say that this is Clairo's In Utero. So whereas when Nirvana put out In Utero, it was kind of like a reaction to Kurt Cobain becoming like the voice of a generation and having the spotlight thrust onto him. And he said, I want to burn as much of that down as I can while still making a record that's true to me and true to my experiences. And so you get songs on that album like Tourette's, like Radio Friendly Unit Shifter, which, great title, all-time great rock title, where he's very deliberately trying to sabotage the listening experience for the people that have maybe gotten on board with Nevermind. Pearl Jam did the same thing on the album Vitalogy. So this is almost Clairo's attempt at doing that. But what's interesting for me when I listen to this album is where Nirvana and Pearl Jam in the 90s went harder and grungier and dirtier and more weird. Clairo got quieter with this one, because if you listen to Immunity, there are songs that kind of fit that kind of pretty twinkling. I talked last week about Snail Mail, that shimmery kind of pop sound. But then there's also songs that are just straight up bops, like Closer to You, one of my favorites from that album. So on this album, it's all very restrained. She is dialing it back a lot of piano, a lot of acoustic guitar, and probably not much of a hook to be found. I don't know if any of y'all have listened to it, but there's not much on there that's going to be like a pop hook that's going to pull you into a song and be like, yeah, that's the one that I'm going to have on my playlist that's going to be repeating. I think the closest it comes is track 2, Amoeba, which incidentally is my favorite song on the album. I do like this album. If there's one thing that I love just as much as an artist, I love releasing a new masterpiece. It's when an artist releases a confusing album.
Yeah.
That's almost just as rewarding, especially when you're talking about the narrative of that artist. It's just very intriguing to me. The one problem I have with this record, despite the fact that it's doing a lot of things I like, she's making me pay attention to her lyrics, but the production it's Jack Antonoff. And I don't think that he was the right person to produce this album. And the reason why I say that is when you think of Jack Antonoff, he is a maximalist. If you've ever listened to anything by Fun, you know that he likes big sounds. He wants to like blow it up. And that has worked for him in the past, like when he produced St. Vincent's Mass Seduction. And he kind of captured that like weird psychosexual energy of that record. I think we can all probably agree that the best moments on Taylor Swift's Folklore were when it would reach a big swell, like this big crescendo. When he produced Melodrama by Lorde, that was a big expansion of her sound on her debut. On Melodrama, it just blew her sound up. So on this album, where Clairo's getting quieter and more insular, I don't know that getting this maximalist producer was the right choice, because you'll have songs where you think, oh God, if you were just doing a little less, this song would hit better. The first single she released, Blouse, is just this very mellow kind of Joni Mitchell-esque folk tune. But her lead vocal is double tracked. And then on top of that, she's also recorded a third voice of herself on harmony. And then on top of that, you've got 3 different string section melodies that come in and out of the song. And you almost think, if you just had yourself an acoustic guitar and maybe one bit of string backing, that song would have hit better for me, you know? It's just too much. There are so many songs where I can't track where the song is going because it's going in all these different directions, and I just want the song to settle down. In a lot of ways, he reminds me of Phil Spector in the late 60s and early 70s, where so much of what he did worked for the artist he was working with. But when he worked with the Beatles on Let It Be, which was supposed to be a very stripped back Beatles album, and then he came in and slathered it with horns and strings, and people hated it, I'm getting that same experience where I'm liking so much of what's going on here, but the production is not letting me fully embrace it because it's just too much. And that's kind of where I sit on this album. Have y'all listened to it at all?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I listened to, I mean, not the full thing, but I mean, the tracks that I did hear, like you said, they were just so quiet and intimate. You know what I mean? It felt like it's so intimate where I was almost like kind of uncomfortable with it, where I was like, whoa, Clairo. Like, what I want to know though is with Immunity, you know, you talked about how that album had some certifiable bops, and it was also produced by Rostam, formerly of Vampire Weekend, which I always thought was so cool. But the thing that I always got from that album was just how sad it was, and just how I got so many depressive themes from Clairo, like to the point where I was like, Clairo, are you okay? Like, you said that this album makes you really pay attention to the lyrics. Do those kind of depressive, sad lyrics continue, or?
In a way, yeah. But I think the thing that I love about what Clairo's doing is that she is very much an artist of Gen Z.
Okay. And,
you know, I'm a high school English teacher, so I get to spend a lot of time around Gen Z and just kind of around their culture. Like, and they are very much developing a generational culture that is very much unlike our kind of shared millennial culture. Clairo is very much of that mindset of laying it all out there and admitting to depression and having these depressive lyrics. You know, if we listening to music in like the early to mid 2000s were to listen to an album with lyrics that raw, it would make us feel bad. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't want to say his name, but Ryan A. Y'all know who I'm talking about. When you listen to his songs, it just makes you feel like crap.
Yeah.
But with Clairo, and what I've noticed from my students that are in Gen Z is that by singing about depression and singing about these topics, it's an uplifting communal experience. It's relationship. So I think the read of it being kind of a depressing listen is a very millennial take. And that from a Gen Z perspective, hearing this is going to be very empowering. Same thing you might get from listening to the new Olivia Rodrigo album, Sour, where for us, we're like, oh God, is she all right? But then if you're Gen Z, you're like, I feel that. Yeah. That's me. Right. I hear me in that song. I'm in a generation of so much interconnectedness, but yet so much distance. Like I see the distance they have from one another. Just that moment of connection in shared mental illness and in shared depression, I think is powerful.
Cool. You know? No, I'm so interested to check this out. You know, overblown Jack Antonoff production aside, this just sounds like such a transformation for her, which I can appreciate. Mm-hmm. So cool. All right. Well, thank you, Jake, for, dishing on Clairo. Yes, Kyle, do you have something?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Just, you had your head tilted up. I was ready. All right. Devan, tell me all about something that is not quiet at all. Gang of Youth's Total Serene EP.
All right. Gang of Youths, a band that I've been waiting to release some new music for a few years now. This is their follow-up to a really fantastic album from 2017, Go Farther in Lightness, that Jake introduced me to a few years ago.
It is my favorite album, probably of all time. Top 5, I would say.
Yeah.
Definitely vying for the top spot. I am a Gang stan.
It is absolutely fantastic.
Do you fall on that too, Devan? Is it
Yeah. And just a warning to everyone. This band is a journey because every song is 5 minutes. Like every single song almost is going to be 5 minutes, and they're the masters of it. Like they're just fantastic at it. They can do a little bit of everything, though it's a rock album at heart, but they will, do full orchestral strings that they write themselves. They'll throw in a little bit of almost instrumentation that you'd hear in like traditional Asian music at times. Like a little bit of everything goes on that album, but this new EP, the first thing that they've released in a few years, start off with a single that really caught my ear big time. It was released sort of out of nowhere. They dropped The Angel of 8th Avenue. And listening to some interviews where they've been talking about it, that was the song that they felt was the most like their previous work. So they wanted to go with that one first and then sort of be like, all right, here's the new stuff. And so that song, it's great. It's a slow burner. It's a good 5 minute. It builds up towards the end. You've got, a fun guitar solo towards the end. This guy's voice is fantastic. If I could steal someone's voice, it would be this guy.
Okay.
For sure. I second that.
No question.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. He's Australian, so that helps. He's just got a fantastic accent, but like the depth that he can get to at times, but then he can like crank it up and go like full rock, but also like stay really warm down there in the middle. It's such a great voice. He's got the Matt Berninger baritone, but then at the same time he can hit those kind of I hate to say it because I know he the person can be easily scorned, but he's got those Bono heights. He can power ahead with the anthem,
No, I was just going to say that's the second time that you've mentioned something that I also wanted to mention.
Yeah.
So I'm ashamed to say this is the first time I've listened to this band. I don't know how they've missed me, but they completely have. So I listened to it today for the first time, and I was blown away at how much I enjoyed it. But it was almost like, to me, this EP, an exact mashup of like the War on Drugs covering U2.
Whoa, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. It's got that heartland rock vibe that the War on Drugs do. It's also very clearly Springsteen inspired, especially this first single on this new EP, The Angel of 8th Avenue. To me, this song kind of is the sign that we're still okay. It's been 4 years, but we can still do what we do best.
Right.
And you get that first, but then you get 2 other songs.
Right. And so the 2 other songs, the middle song on this EP is just 3 tracks, but it's a solid almost 15 minutes because this is what they do, is a cover by a band called Elbow. I like that track. It's definitely a turn from some of their older stuff, but obviously it's a cover, so I'm not sure this is something that's going to make the full album. We'll just have to see in time. It's a nice branch into the new one. And then the third track, that's the one where I think it really takes off. The track is called Unison. It's, again, a slow build, but I think this is a weird band at times that reminds me of a little bit of LCD Sound System, in the sense that they can start with one beat and then they can just keep that going, and that beat never changes, but they build up all around it
Layers
really,
and
really
layers
well.
and layers,
Yes.
yeah. For
Very
sure.
krautrock.
Yeah.
Ooh, wait a second.
Yeah.
I didn't get krautrock off the track.
Yeah,
the third
yeah.
track I'll have to listen again. I
Yeah.
love
And
that.
especially the way that the drums with the hi-hat kick in
Right.
at the end
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
so krautrock. Yeah, it's great.
And it's not Gang of Youths at all. It's something that's completely new to them. It's a danceable beat, like at the end. And if you watch the music video, he takes off and he just dances, and it's great.
Yeah.
Just to see like him like really let loose like that. And Go Farther in Lightness that's a tough album, both in the sense that it's a long album that's great, but it's also really tough in the sense that it's about some really dark, tough themes and at a really tough point in his life. And then this album is seeming to be a lot more uplifting. It's about moving to a new city. They all moved from Australia to London. Loved it. It's a great track. Unison is the top one for me.
Now,
So happy to have them back.
I need to shill that cover though, Sleep in the Back.
Yeah.
I need to just take a second to just say that is a phenomenal cover. I have listened to Elbow in the past, have not listened to this song specifically before. This song blows me away as well though. And they've elevated covers before. They have a cover that they do of the song Blood by a band called The Middle East, which has never been released on an album or an EP by them, but which you can find very easily on YouTube on the Australian radio show Like a Version, which is just a cover series. But they do it on that program, and they take this song Blood, which is a very good song, but they elevate it in that Gang of Youths kind of way. This is the same thing, where I've listened now to the original by Elbow, and Gang of Youths just takes the song to the next level. The emotion that he can put behind the words of someone who's not even, like, words that aren't even his own. Like, I wish I could sell a cover as well as he can sell a cover, because you listen to that, and if you did not
Right.
know it was a cover, like I didn't when I first listened to this,
Yeah.
you would think, yeah, this is your song. He's singing it with that conviction. You don't always get that from covers. But my favorite part of that song is there's this one guitar part that goes on in the background where it starts low, and I don't want to do an impression because I don't want to deafen the listeners, but it starts very low and then just ascends to this high note in the background, and then goes back down to the low note and back up to the high note, and it sounds almost like a wave on the ocean. And it's just a perfect sonic detail that makes that song jump to the next level for me. And it's not in the original recording. It's just a moment where you could tell they just got inspired by the feel of that song and said, we're going to add this additional layer on. And man, for 3 songs, I was not expecting to embrace this as much as I did. It's great.
Yep.
I can't recommend
Yes.
this EP enough.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have them back. Still no idea when the full album's going to come out, but super excited for it. That will absolutely be on my What's on Queue at some point. No question.
Yeah. If I don't get it first.
Yes.
You guys can
see.
just do it together, you know?
Yeah,
You know?
we're in the gang.
That's it.
So Reed,
Yes, sir. Wait, hold on one sec. I want to say one thing.
Oh.
I listened to this Gang of Youth CP, and I was very not cold on it. I didn't like it, but it also just didn't do what I think it did for you guys. But that is why I love things like this podcast, is to hear you guys espouse why you love it, the details of why you love it. Like, No better feeling in the world. Just really love it. Anyway, go ahead, Jake. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, it's interesting that it doesn't speak to you in the same way, but I feel like that's spoken to a lot of what we've kind of grown as listeners, what I've learned that you like versus what you've learned that we like.
Totally.
So this tracks for me. I know Go Farther and Lightness didn't do it for you in the way it did for us either. So I was prepared for this. I'm not brokenhearted.
I'm going to listen to it again. I'm not telling you like, no, don't believe Devan and Jake. Gang of Youth is bad. It's just, yeah.
Speaking of disagreements over albums, I know that you have a very different take from me on this next one. Reed, tell me about Call Me If You Get Lost by Tyler Baudelaire, formerly Tyler the Creator, probably still Tyler the Creator. He doesn't know what he wants to be called.
He's going to be whoever he wants to be, which I feel like is kind of the crux of this album. So really quick at the top, I want to say that I am not like the biggest Tyler, the Creator fan. Okay. And I say that because I know that he has true disciples who've been with him since like the Odd Future days and like the late, 2000s or so. I jumped on board in 2017's Flower Boy. My buddy Jacob, shout out to Jacob, knew that I really loved jazzy hip hop. And he was like, dude, you've got to give this Tyler album a listen. And I followed his advice and oh my God, I'm so happy I did. That album is straight up one of the most gorgeous ear candy listens that I can think of. I just think the music across all of it is this buttery, summery, jazzy stew that I just love to get lost in. So when he released 2019's Igor, which won him a Grammy, it was a big album for him, I just kind of bounced off of it. It just wasn't really for me. And that's not, again, me like saying it's a bad album, but there was just something about the amount that he sang on that album.
You bounced off of Earthquake?
Earthquake is fine, but
even I loved that song.
Earthquake was no boredom for me, man. Like boredom from Flower Boy was like the moment where I was like, oh, Tyler is special. Like we've got to pay attention to this guy. So that was the thing. When I saw that this was more of a mixtape release, the Call Me If You Get Lost, I got excited. I was like, cool, is this going to be Flower Boy 2? It's not. It's not at all. If you listen to this album, I think one of the first things you'll be struck by is how messy it is, right? So if you go from track 1 to 5 to 8 to whatever, you're like, man, it's like he can't really settle on a single idea. He just kind of keeps hopping and hopping and hopping. But I think that's what the title of the album is. It's like, call me if you get lost. If I lose you at some point, too bad. I'm on my own journey and my own travel plan, right? So I think what I've come to appreciate about this album is that it does genre hop and it does kind of do all these different sonic things. But that's what I love about it. It's so invigorating and he does them all so well. And I think some of it is kind of a like retreat to his past a little bit. There are these like kind of horrorcore, mean, evil sounding songs that, so I'm thinking of like Corso, Lemonhead, Lumberjack, Manifesto, that sound so much like that kind of like, punkish tyrant that Tyler the Creator was supposed to be when he first, came on the scene. But then in other spots, you do have that super lavish, jazzy, decadent production like on Sir Baudelaire, Rise, Hot Wind Blows, Run It Up, Safari. And then for good measure, he takes 10 minutes to do this like 2-part slow jam song where he sings kind of in the style of Igor and Flower Boy. Like he's just trying to kind of pull all of these things that he's done and kind of give you a tour of like, this is who I am and this is what I can do.
And that's so interesting that was your impression of it, because when I listened to this, I thought it was kind of samey.
Really?
I listened to it and I thought, man, Tyler sounds the same on most of these songs. And every single song, who's his, the hype man?
DJ Drama.
DJ Drama, yeah. And I know there's a whole history with DJ Drama that I'm not privy to, so I'm
Sure.
not going to speak to his past work.
Right.
But on this album, God, he just annoyed me. It's like, stop shouting over the song, man.
Oh, man.
I just want to listen to Tyler. And Tyler does not have many lyric or many verses that go the longer than like 15 to 20 seconds. And when I listen to a rap album, what I want is for that rapper to get into a flow state and just go. And to wrap back around to Dave, he does that.
Right.
He will get on a verse and stay on it. And whereas Tyler on this album, I felt like he would get on a verse and he'd be like, yeah, okay, I like this so loud. There's DJ Drama shouting over it. Call me when you get lost, saying the album name wrong. And now I'm out of it again.
See,
talk about getting ice cream.
We could not have more different takes because I think throughout this album, Tyler talks so much about travel. That's kind of the whole thing, right? Is that he is on a plane, he's on a boat in the Bahamas, he is traveling on some expensive vacation that we just can't enjoy. And DJ Drama is kind of like the Greek chorus, where I feel like he's trying to give us context in terms of what's going on and what kind of the point is. I happen to love DJ Drama. He gets me so hyped when I listen to it. His hype man bona fides are for real, man. He's been doing this for a long time.
He's no Flavor Flav.
Oh my God. But I think too, the thing that I love is that you're right. I guess all the songs are pretty short except for the slow jam
Except
10
for the
minute
two
song.
that are too long.
And Wilshire is not too long
Wilshire
at
is
all.
way too long.
Wilshire is doing exactly what you said that Tyler doesn't do, which is when he sticks to his flow and he just goes. And that song is
but
incredible.
then he goes too long.
No, he doesn't. No. That song has such a purpose because throughout this album, you have Tyler basically talking about how, he's got power, he's got influence, he's got money, he can do all these things. And you kind of sounds like boasting, right? Where you're just like, oh my God, Tyler, I don't care. But then when you really listen, the thing that he keeps getting back to is the thing that I don't have is love. I don't have a relationship. That's the one thing that I can't buy despite all my influence. I can have sex with people all the time. I can't have an intimate, deepened relationship. That all leads to Wilshire, where basically on Wilshire, he takes 8 minutes to explain this relationship that he found himself in with this girl, where he was like, hey, I really like you. I'm really infatuated with you. I'm really feeling this. And she's like, I do too. But guess what? I'm with your friend. And he's like, oh, crap. Okay, well, I'm not going to be that guy that breaks up a relationship, breaks up a friendship. But then the rest of the song is him kind of wrestling with that, right? Being like, okay, I don't care anymore. I like you this much. This is what we should do. This feels good. I can't do this to my friend. Oh, we should break up. And I don't care about you anymore, but God, I do. And it's just him like continuously trying to be like, how do I feel? It's that gray area, right? That I think is so interesting. And that beat is fire, dude. That beat is so incredible. That is like some crisp drums, just these like loungy, jazzy pools that I could get lost in.
Man.
If that instrumental was if that beat was just an instrumental, I could hang out there forever. I love it.
Everything you're saying, I'd be like, that would be cutting edge if Drake didn't already exist and hadn't already existed for 10 years, because every Drake song is just a drum loop with a jazzy sound over it and him talking about how he can't have the love that he wants. And Drake has been doing that for 10 years, and I'm so sick of hearing it because it's been done to death by Drake and all of his wannabe sound-alikes. And I'm like, Tyler, you don't have to do this. I don't want you to do this.
But it's how he feels, Jake.
But it's how he feels, yeah.
I mean, I think it's really convincing. I love it because he does just seem to like, again, he goes so in depth about how this is not like a black and white situation, right? Like it's just something he really struggles with. There are two other songs that I want to shout out really quick. One of them for just his pure lyrical ability is Massa, where it's really, really autobiographical, where he's really kind of peeling back the layers in history that Tyler has. And he's talking about how when the Yonkers video dropped in Odd Future and Tyler blew up, his mom was still in a shelter and he was able to get her out. He also talks about how his critics would always kind of like, all of his nuances would always be a crutch, right? But as he begins to rap more on that song, he gets more and more passionate. And there's this one lyrical nugget I love where he says, you can't relate to these things I say to instrumentals, whether it's golf talk or shit that's painful. I paint full pictures of my perspective on these drum breaks just for you to say it's not good from your lunch break. And then on Manifesto, he talks with his friend Domogenesis, raps with his friend Domogenesis about what is his responsibility as a prominent black artist to talk about all of the social unrest from the last year. Does he have a responsibility to say something? And he kind of says like, well, what if I don't have anything good to add? Like, why is that suddenly my tag in my place? Also, this stuff is really hard for me personally to deal with and think about as well, which I was like, oh my God, like that's the thing is that he can go, whether it's just like, shit talking about how powerful and influential he is, or just these topics that again are so gray. I just think he is like he's on a different level to me, musically, rapping. He is just the guy. I think this album is fantastic. Easily probably top 10 of the year. If you've missed out on it, don't. It's so good. Any other takes on Tyler?
I'd rather just listen to Vince Staples.
Wow. Man. Jake, I really think you need to listen to it again, man. I'm telling you.
I have.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I listened to it a couple of times and I'm with Jake. I got lost. I did get lost both times.
Did you
But I
call
can't
him?
call
I
him. He
didn't.
doesn't include his number.
I know. Yeah, that's the problem. No, but that line that you were talking about, where especially about like, hey, what do you have to say about this? Should you say something about this? That one did stick with me even on the first listen, because it was, I don't know exactly what to say, and if I don't know what to say, but I say the wrong thing, you're worse off. And so with where he's going with that, I did feel like I could kind of understand where he's at there.
There are moments for sure.
Yeah. Still got
that,
lost.
It's that start-stop. You know, I can never get fully into a flow, can't fully get into his ideas because he keeps getting interrupted by DJ Drum. And I'm like, I want to hear more about this, not be reminded what the name of the album is again.
You got lost. It's
But
okay.
hey,
Call him.
whatever. It's fine. It's fine.
It's fine. All right. Well, this was a good one, actually, because today's title track is all about our personal listening routines, our personal listening habits, what we do to listen to music. So to break that down for just a second, there are tons of options to listen to music today, right? I mean, you can stream something from your phone. You can pull up a concert video on YouTube. Maybe you collect records or CDs. You can put that on. Maybe, your town has a really cool radio station and you got a radio station that you always trust. There's tons of options, but more than where you can stream music, there are just tons of different ways to listen to it. There's some like intimate headphone listening where you're just like on your bed for 40 minutes and you're just going deep on an album. There are possibilities where you can just be driving around in a car. Maybe there's, maybe you're with some friends and there's like one playlist that you play. So I want to break all that down between us. And I want to ask the four of us, how do we listen to music? I've got a couple questions to kind of lead this conversation, but I'm really, really interested to see where we go. And Kyle, I don't want to pick on you, man. Not at all because of the age thing but you have been listening to music longer than all of us have, especially seriously. And I have to imagine that from, kind of the late 90s, early 2000s to now, your personal listening habits have probably changed a lot just with technology and everything, right?
Yeah. So like, it's kind of like it started a way, changed, and now it's kind of circling back to the original way. But, I got really into music when I was living in North Alabama. And obviously North Alabama, there's lots of sticks and back roads and woods and that kind of stuff. So for me to like fully absorb and get into a new record, I would wait till I was in the car and I could have a long period of time and just crank it up and listen to everything. And, just the wall of sound, if you will. But then like, I got more serious, moved away to college, came home, started collecting records, and I'm up to 500 or 600 records or so. But so for a while it was, get a new record that you really like, sit down with it, whether you sit in a chair, go through the liner notes, the stereotypical kind of stuff. And I would do that for a while and it's great. But now, life is much more serious and work responsibilities and being married. I don't have the time to do that anymore. My records are in the room where I work. So I do listen to records while I work, but I'm also working. So, my attention span isn't just solely on the record like it used to be. I'm paying attention to work or something outside or whatever. So as it's kind of taken this trip, I'm kind of back to, if there's a record that I'm really, really excited about, I'm going to wait till I have a long drive and just really go into it again.
I love it. When you would listen to the record, or when you would listen to albums for the first time in the backwoods of North Alabama in your car, were those CDs that you would buy, or was it like just mixed CDs? Or
the Best Buy on University Drive in Huntsville, Alabama, like I wish I could know how much money I gave that place in just CDs. But yeah, it was Huntsville is the type of place where wherever you're going, it's going to be at least a 15-minute drive to get somewhere. So yeah, it was just lots of CDs. It was passenger seat of the car was the binder of CDs. So, you're dodging traffic and picking out a CD. But yeah, it definitely started with CDs.
I love it. Jake, CDs were a big thing between you and I for a long time.
Yeah, we used to run up to Coconuts back when that existed.
Yep.
And we would get like probably 5 or 6 new CDs or sometimes pre-owned CDs. One of my favorite CD memories, Reed, was the day that you bought Paranoid by Black Sabbath.
Yes.
And you had not heard this album. And we put it on the minute we got into the car, and the minute we pulled into the parking space when we were back at the university is when the album ended. Couldn't have framed it better. A car listen is like top tier for me. If I get a good long drive, a car listen is where it's at. For me, most of my drives are not going to be enough at this point to get a full podcast, or not podcast. We're on a podcast, a full album in. I say that to say that so I find myself often listening to podcasts when I drive. But every now and then I'll throw on an album. But for me, the place where I found recently, especially since my summer break started, is when I go to the gym, when I work out, or when I go run around the neighborhood park. Usually I like to put on an album then because it lasts about as long. If I'm listening to a full-length album, usually it lasts about as long as a good workout anyway. So it gives me a good timer while still getting to do something I want. And because you're working out, that's the only thing on my mind. I'm not worried about too much else. You can do the motions or run without too much mental investment. So exercise has been a great place to listen for sure.
Maybe that's why I like hardcore records, because I can only work out for about 10, 15 minutes.
Also, Jake talked about Paranoid with Black Sabbath. Pretty sure that was also bought at a Best Buy. So Best Buy reps, if you're listening, please keep the $5 to $10 CD racks. They're very important to
now,
music
Paranoid
education.
was definitely in the CD section of a Barnes & Noble.
The Barnes & Noble CD section. Yes, you're right.
Bookstores need to sell music still.
Yeah.
That was the day. Not that I really buy music anymore. I'm going to be honest. Most of the albums I buy are records just so that I can take the record out, file it away, and put the sleeve up on the bulletin board in my classroom. I have spaces for 18 different albums, and I'll just mix and match them, slot them out. So I mostly just buy music for the art now. Most of my listening, if we're going to be honest, comes through Spotify.
Okay.
You're trying to get those kids into honking on Bobo, aren't you?
Man, if only I had the album art up on my wall for that. No, the kids, they love the Blue Album by Weezer. That's one of their favorites to point out. Be like, I know that one.
Yeah.
Purple Rain by Prince. Okay. I had a kid point it out once and be like, what's Purple Pain?
Oh, no.
This is what you're about to be in if you say that again.
Yeah.
Probably, hey, if you're listening to this podcast, bud, thanks for the story.
Listen to Purple Rain. Deco, what about you? Were you a CD guy?
Oh, definitely. So I absolutely relate to you guys about the like Best Buy and like Coconuts, like $5 CD racks, except mine was at the Lifeway Christian Bookstore.
Oh.
So absolutely support the bookstores selling music. I can't tell you how many albums that I bought for $5 at Lifeway as a kid, and have found music that maybe hasn't stuck with me for so long, like a ska punk band side project about a space shuttle that gets lost around Saturn. Yeah, that was a fun album. Loved it at the time.
Did they have like an amazing cover, and that's why you picked it? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but it's
plus
funny
it was $5.
you say that. When you were buying CDs at Lifeway, did you ever notice that sometimes the album covers were different at Lifeway than they really were?
I think I do remember that from time to time.
I got really into a hardcore band called Comeback Kid that was vaguely Christian. I don't even think they were really Christian. They were on a Christian label. But like the cover of their actual album had like this guy with like blood all over his shirt or whatever. But at Lifeway, it wasn't that cover at all. It just said like Comeback Kid on a black cover. They like completely changed the cover.
I was going to ask with Lifeway too, like if it would just be clean versions of albums.
So for them, almost entirely, there was never a question of whether it was a clean album or not, except for like in this case, the band, the initial band was Five Iron Frenzy, and they had a side project called Brave Saint Saturn. But some of their albums from time to time, if they did reference hell or they would say something that was maybe a little bit questionable, it would release through their record label. But the one that would be released to Lifeway would have a slightly different word used from time to time. And so there were times where even certain bands would dislike that. And so if you bought the album through their website, they could only send you the physical copy that was the same way, but they'd email you like an MP3 of the real version of the song.
That's dope.
Yeah. So this was a thing that definitely happened for a lot of bands, especially like when you're talking about bands that were on like vaguely Christian labels, but like they weren't really Christian bands. They just weren't. They didn't have a lot of like bad language in their music or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't tell you how many songs.
Like noted
albums,
Christian startup 21 Pilots.
Yeah, apparently so.
Who I somehow I didn't even realize this, but I saw them in 2011 at a Christian music festival years before they were anything.
Wild.
Yeah,
Right.
it's crazy. But a lot of bands would get their start like just on Christian labels. Because if they were playing songs that were like generally clean or they talked about some sort of like hopeful, optimistic themes, you could get signed on a Christian label easier than you could get signed on like Columbia, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was a way to get started for a lot of bands. And Christian music ended up being a gateway into a lot of stuff that I eventually would like outside of that sphere. Some of my earliest memories of hardcore were Christian bands that were kind of in the hardcore arena. So some of my entry to metal, especially more extreme types of metal, I didn't get into black metal. I got into white metal.
There you go.
That seems problematic.
It's so problematic.
Well,
It's so problematic. But yeah, that was a gateway for sure. But kind of getting a little off topic on the overall title track.
As you can tell, we are going to have an episode that's a deep dive on the influence of Christian music.
yes.
All of our Alabama listeners, I think, are going to get a kick out of that.
Yeah.
If you're our one listener in Iran, we love you. That's going to be a really hard episode for you, and I'm sorry.
It'll be good. It'll be a glimpse into suburban American culture.
But please, Iranian listener, if you are listening to this, please hit us up on Twitter with good Iranian artists to listen to. Because I would love
absolutely.
to check out some music from Iran as well.
100%. I have a question. When you guys, I had a weird thing. So I collected CDs for a long time, but then when I got access to things like Spotify, buying a CD was like a really sacred experience for me. You know what I mean? It was like, cool. I've listened, I wouldn't listen to the full album on YouTube. I would only give myself a couple singles, and then I would buy the CD and then like just take a gamble. So then when I got to Spotify and I suddenly was like, cool, you can listen to everything all at once. Just go ahead and do it. I was really weird about it. And Jake, I remember this was a point of contention for us in college. And be like, Reed, there's this one album you should listen to. And I'm like, cool, I'm going to check out a single or two on Spotify, but I'm just not going to play it all. And you're like, why? And I was like, guess I got to buy the CD probably. And you're like, get over that, man, please.
Well, and the thing that, like, if you stuck to that and you listened to the singles and then the next day you went out and bought a CD, if you liked the singles, I wouldn't have any problem.
Yeah.
But there would be weeks that would go by where I'd be like, Reed, you listen to that album yet? And he'd be like, nah, I don't have the CD. And I'd be like, stop it.
Stop. Just stream it, boy.
I think, though, that's a big hang up, especially for people that are in the later half of the millennial generation.
Yeah.
Is that, I don't know about y'all, but I really want to buy physical music. I want to buy CDs and buy vinyl. Don't really want to buy tapes.
Right.
But some people do. And when I don't have that opportunity, because there's not a lot of places to buy them, and even then when you get to a place you can buy them, a lot of times it's hard to find what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Spotify is easy to fall back on. I know it doesn't support artists the way we want them to, but if we're going to be honest, most of our music listening for all four of us, I'm sure at this point is coming from streaming. You know?
100%.
Oh, yes.
And
100%.
that leads also into the realm of playlists and shuffling, which Kyle, I know you specifically have a big love of making playlists.
Kyle has a degree in playlist making, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, so I was going to say, like, I used to be, like, staunch no shuffling. Like, it was like a sin to shuffle. And I still stand by that if I'm listening to one album. Even if it's on Spotify. If I'm listening to one album, I think the artist, band, musician tracked the album that way for a reason. Whether you agree with it or not, that's another story. But they wanted you to listen to it in that sequence.
For sure. Not against them making a playlist with your preferred track list just to see.
Fixed track list.
Yeah.
Yes.
But with that said, I looked today before we recorded this. I've done 127 playlists on Spotify. So I'm a big... I listen to stuff either off moods or seasons. A big season guy, but I have a playlist literally for every mood. I drove Reed over here today, and I told him, I was like, it's raining, so I have a shoegaze playlist specifically for when it rains. It's pictures of clouds at night, and then I have a shoegaze playlist for when it's not raining called Pictures of Clouds in the Daytime.
Oh my God, Kyle, obsessed. Yeah. Now, do you? I think I've also perused your playlist library. Do you also make covers for your playlists?
Yeah, so you can do that. I think a lot of people don't know that you can do that. But yeah, if I don't know if you can do it on the app still, but I know you can do it on the web version of Spotify. So by make covers, you use make loosely. I steal pictures from the internet and put it as the or like a picture I took, or something like that. But yeah, what the name of the podcast or the name of the playlist is or the cover is, I'm a big stickler of.
Love it. What about you, Jake? What's your playlist?
I've got a lot of playlists. A lot of them are just playlists that I've made for my girlfriend Ava to kind of introduce her to music that I love, and then she would do the same for me.
Yeah.
So a lot of my playlists are that, but every now and then I'll just get an idea, and you're like, this probably won't work. This is real stupid, but I'm gonna do it anyway. One of my favorite things to do, I love to do what I call like essentials playlists, where I take an artist and I just like make what would be my greatest hits, and I can include everything I want instead of just picking 10 songs. Yeah. But my other favorite thing to do is take two artists that you wouldn't necessarily put together and give them a playlist. And then try to pair the songs up. And so I made a playlist called We'll Come Together, which is Wilco and the Beatles.
Right.
And I alternate between Beatles songs and Wilco songs. And I try to pair them up where, like, the Beatles song I'm listening to, the next song will be a Wilco song that in some way either musically or thematically connects to that. Which that's just a really fun thing for me to do. I did one for Tom Petty and Weezer called Tom Weezy and the Life Takers, which you could find on my Spotify account if you want to follow that playlist. I'm real proud of it.
I have to imagine that is the only playlist on Spotify with that title. I hope.
If anybody else has it, get off, back off. Get off my name. But yeah, playlists are fun for me. They are never going to supplant the album listening experience for me. I don't think there's definitely been a shift, I would say, culturally over the last 15-ish years as digital music and then eventually streaming has gotten more and more popular, where people have started to shift their listening habits farther and farther from the album. But the alarmism about the album dying is unfounded. Completely. I think there's always going to be that subsection of the music listening public that wants that album experience. It's why artists continue to release albums in the age of streaming. They might try to call, like Drake called More Life, a playlist. They might try to come up with funky names for it, but we know what an album is. You can call it a mixtape, you can call it an album, you can call it a collection of singles, whatever. We know what an album is.
Well, and like, if anything, I kind of listen to, I like the album listening experience more, because like I'll be listening to a playlist that has 100, 200, 300 songs, and then a song will come on, and I'll be like, oh shit, I forgot about this album. Yeah. And I go into the album and just start it from the start, take off shuffle, and then I'm good. You know, and it's you get to rediscover music constantly. Yeah,
playlists remind me of what I love, and then I can go in and discover from there.
Right. I'm a big time playlist in the car guy most of the time. I especially like the classic Discover Weekly. I listen to that most of the time when I'm in the car throughout the week, because one, when I'm listening to an album, I want to make it through at least most of the album, hopefully the entire thing all in one go. So, a quick playlist is an easy way to go like, okay, I can listen to 3 songs on this quick drive, move on, and I can join back in and not feel like I'm out of touch with what's going on with the rest of it. So I'm absolutely with you, Jake, on the throwing playlists together, because like you'll be hearing songs every now and then. You'll be like, ooh, what if I put this Vampire Weekend song with a Catfish and the Bottlemen song that I know work really well together, and throw a playlist together like that? Like, absolutely. I do that a lot. But most of the time when I'm listening to music, I'm at home. And so a lot of that is just, starting an album and trying to go, from start to finish as much as I can. I have a good 75 albums at the top of my list right now from all bands that I've heard I've never listened to them before. And they're just like, I'm making my way through one by one. And I never remove the album from my list until I've listened to it a good 3 or 4 times, or at least tried to listen to it 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
Because I can start, The Armed the other day, Ultra Pop, and I can go, this isn't what I want right now, but like, I'm not just going to write this off and not come back to it. So I've done that several times where I'll listen and I'll get like 2 or 3 songs in and I'm like, okay, I see where they're going. That's not what I want right now, but I'm going to come back to this in 2 or 3 days and I can, totally change my mind. I did that with Gang of Youths originally. You showed that to me and I was like, okay, this is good, but it's not my thing. It's my thing now. Sorry. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm still making my way through. It won't be this year by the time I get through those 75. So I'll let you know when that list is gone.
In the future, for like a future episode topic, to talk about how we manage our music backlog.
Yeah.
How do you go back and listen to albums that you've missed or that you've wanted to get to? Because that's an ordeal.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
That is an ordeal.
Devan, you mentioned something too. I love that topic, Jake, but you mentioned something too about the Discover Weekly playlist. And that led me to another question that I love, which is, how do you discover new music? Like, I know I will definitely find myself in a place where I'll see kind of the albums that I've saved on Spotify, or I'll be listening to the same playlist and I'm like, okay, I'm ready for something totally new. I've just overplayed all of this to death. How do you guys choose, like, all right, where am I going to go to listen to something new? Or do you just like look up albums? Do you have like a playlist or a radio station you go to? Like, what are your discovery wells?
So, like, for me, there's three things. One is blogs, and it's blogs that I've like read for years at this point. And like the two big ones are Brooklyn Vegan and Gold Flake Paint. I check those daily just to see what they're saying, because 95% of the time I'm going to dig something that they posted that day. A big one for me now is that I've started doing since like COVID started and we're just sitting at home staring at our phones all the time, is if there's bands that I really like or a record label, I follow them on Instagram because everyone hypes up, you know, their friends and their label mates and that kind of stuff. And I found a lot of music that way, just from being like, well, I like, you know, X band and they're, you know, shouting out Y band. And most of the time, you know, I like Y band. And then, so then you follow them and they're hyping somebody up and it just keeps going and going and going.
Totally.
And then the other is just word of mouth. You know, at this point, we all have friends and we know what our friends know what we like and don't like. And, Devan, you brought up a good point a second ago. A good thing about Spotify is I'll have a lot of friends sometimes be like, hey, check out this, you know, band that sounds like the Grateful Dead. But I'm listening at that time to like a hardcore record. And I'm like, well, I can't hang with that right now.
Right.
But yeah, I can put it on the back burner and then check it out later.
Totally. No, and I think too, that situational listening, Jake, I know that it would always piss you off after I would take weeks to listen to a recommendation. But I think sometimes what I've discovered, because I love, again, talking about music with people. There we go. I had to spit it out. You know, part of that is also giving recommendations and sharing. And I think what I've discovered is that sometimes you can be so sure that someone is going to love something and be like, oh man, I've diagnosed you. I know it. And then you'd be like, cool, listen to this. And if they may be listening to a different genre, they may just be in a different mood. And I'm just like, you know what? Whenever you want to listen to it, just get to it. Save it at some point.
Right.
And whenever the time is right. Because I think with my significant other, if I'm like, Stephanie, I love this album, you're going to listen to it. She's like, I'm just not really in that mood right now. And then it burns her from it. That happened with Hiss Golden Messenger actually in college, where I was like, I love Hiss. And then she was like, I hate Hiss. 5 years later, oh, I love Hiss. And now we both have Hiss tattoos. That's just the way it is.
Maybe they're just waiting to buy the CD.
That's true. That's
you know,
true.
I have mellowed a lot from my college self because I got to experience both on my end and on other people's ends, recommendations burning out because of too much fervor.
Yeah. Right.
So I think my universal advice to people is keep tabs on what might be interesting. And so, like, if you see something that you're like, I probably will like that, but I'm not in the mood, don't listen to it when you're not in the mood. Yeah. Just save it. It's fine. And when you're recommending something to a person, don't tell them you have to listen to this or go listen to this right now, because there's no faster way to burn someone. It reminds me of a friend of mine who said that when he met the woman who would eventually become his wife, he basically like nailed her to the couch and said, you're going to watch the Lord of the Rings trilogy with me right now.
Gotcha.
And of course, she didn't like the Lord of the Rings trilogy because she was trapped on a couch and forced to watch the entire thing in one sitting, basically. Whereas years later, when she comes to Lord of the Rings on her own terms, she loves it.
Yeah.
And you just have to let people come to things when they're ready for it. So for me, when it comes to how I absorb music, sometimes I'll sit on a band for years and years and years and years. And then eventually I'll say, you know what? Maybe it is time to listen to the Silver Jews. I still haven't done that, by the way.
Ooh, boy.
Still not time.
But you, Reed, and my coworker, Brandy, who I'm going to shout out because she listened to the podcast last week. I hope you're listening this week. Have both been trying to get me on board with the Berminator. So we'll see. Maybe eventually I'll be in the mood.
Yeah. No, he's the guy. No, and there's no sweeter thing, too, than when a recommendation does hit and someone's like, oh my God, you were totally right. Or what I love doing, we were talking about playlists, is, you know, I'll have a group of friends over and I'll be very, you know, specific about what playlist I'm playing, and we're listening and chilling and not paying attention to the music at all. And someone says, hey, what is this? And I'm like, I'm so glad you asked. I've been waiting for that question for an hour.
No one ever asks it except like on the one time you're not prepared. It's like, well, crap, who is this?
Yeah. No greater feeling. But in terms of music discovery, so Kyle, you know, pays attention to blogs, word of mouth. What about you guys? How do you guys pay attention?
Yeah, mine is definitely through Discover Weekly for one, but then also too, a useful feature that I've seen at least on Spotify is on the homepage, you'll have this band is like another band you've listened to. And so I will go through even routinely and just save like every single one that they've listed if I haven't heard of them before. Or if I maybe it's an album that I haven't listened to, but it's a band I know and I'm like, okay, I do like them or I don't like this one. And I'll just save it. And I'm a paying Spotify member. I absolutely save every album. I never just hit like on an album. I save it, I download it because I never know when I'm going to want to listen to it. So I'm a big time, like save it, download the whole thing, listen to it at some point. Absolutely one to find music through that. Also through YouTube, through things like you were talking about, like a version earlier, through that, like if a band covers a group that, you know, it's a song that I really like and I'll go, ooh, they did a really good cover. So I want to try that band now.
I actually discovered Nothing But Thieves because they covered Gang of Youths on like a version. Yeah. And then I ended up listening to their records.
Right.
Oh, wild.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But for me, mostly, I you know, you find publications that you like, you find, like Kyle said, blogs that you like, or you just find individuals that you like. You follow them on Twitter, you follow them on Instagram, or if they write for a publication like uprocks.com, do not read most of their music coverage. I will read everything Stephen Hyden writes because I trust the man implicitly. And I would be willing to probably say that 75% of the new music that I love probably comes directly from the mouth of Stephen Hyden. You just got to find that one person who has access to lots of music, who has your taste. And if you can find that one person, you're going to have a lot of your recommendations taken care of just from them. And then you can supplement the rest. Like, he's not going to give me the metal I want, but I've got other people for that.
Totally.
Shout out to Ian Cohen, too.
Yeah. Stephen Hyden and Ian Cohen hosting the IndieCast, one of our favorite collective music podcasts. I don't know if everybody's listened to it, but this podcast loves the IndieCast. You should give them a listen. We were not paid to say that. They don't know who we are.
Yeah, friends of the pod, right? That's the term.
Definitely cannot make that claim.
Maybe one day. No, I do a lot of what these guys have already talked about, but my one secret weapon for finding new music that is always the most interesting, there is a YouTube show from Amoeba Records in California called What's in My Bag. And
yes, sir.
They have artists that come on and, you know, the whole conceit is that they go shop in the store and then they come and talk to you about the records or the movies or the CDs or whatever that they bought. Unequivocally, artists are always the most interesting in terms of musical recommendations because you will have like a metal band who is like, I remember the Mastodon episode, the drummer, I think Brand Daler was like, Braun Daler. Thank you, Braun. He was really into some like Middle Eastern, you know, just psychedelic rock and was also into some like 60s, you know, folk singer I've never heard of, but then all of this weird ambient music. Like they always surprise me with what they pull up. And I've learned to, you know, that's my Friday night ritual is to just load up some What's in My Bag on YouTube, get my notes album or my notes app out on my phone and then just whatever album or title that they talk about, I just record, and it's always great, for sure.
And I mean, I think the last thing that always gets us is the zeitgeist. You know, there'll be, we will listen to Donda when it comes out, you know. There's certain albums that are just unavoidable that you will listen to. Sometimes you like them, sometimes you don't, but we'll get to those, if nothing else, you know.
Totally. It's the best and worst of that zeitgeist, for sure. All right. Does anyone else have anything to add to this discussion about music listening habits? Any quirks? Any music listening quirks? I forgot to say I love to listen to music when I do the dishes.
You start with do the, and I'm worried about where it's going from there. When you do the what, Reed?
You never know with me.
Do the taxes.
Do the taxes.
No, probably the quirkiest thing I do is, you know, I'll sneak music in that I love while my students are working in class. Last year, I gained a great appreciation for The Waterfall 2 by My Morning Jacket because it was such an easy album to play while they were working. And, you know, that's not an album I ever would have pulled independently, but when you listen to it in the background while students are working, it just clicks. And I've come to love that album.
My one quirky thing, and I will admit this is actually just stupid, is I like you were saying, Jake, I do buy tapes. And I listen to them exclusively in my garage.
Okay.
That's the place for tapes.
It could be Steve Winwood or it could be Waxahachie.
Okay.
You know, it could be either or.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, all right. This has been episode 2 of the Proof of Sound podcast. I think it was a damn fine episode, if I do say so myself. We talked a lot about how we prefer to listen to music, our music discovery platforms, just our odd quirks with music. But what about you? We'd love you, the listener, to join in on the convo. Now, you may be saying, yeah, Reed, I'd love to do that, but the four of you are just a group of pre-recorded voices coming from my headphones or my phone or my TV or my car. How do you want me to do that? Technically, you're right. However, what you can do is follow us on Twitter or Instagram, preferably both, at Proof of Sound Pod. That's Proof of Sound Pod, where you can defy the laws of space and time and join in on the conversation. You can tweet at us or send us an Instagram DM to tell us all about how you listen to music. That follow will also get you an easy access to a playlist with some of the music that we talked about in this very episode. And now, presenting the new segment of Proof of Sound Podcast. Jake, take it away.
Lightning round. A final closing question for us. We're going to go around the board. We're going to go Reed, Kyle, Devan, me. Your final question and your final thoughts are, what is the one Christian band that has influenced your listening the most? Reed.
I would have to say Switchfoot, because The Beautiful Letdown was one of the first CDs I ever owned.
All
and
right.
They were big.
Awesome.
MXPX, without a doubt.
Fantastic. Devan.
It's Reliant K. It's not even close.
Yeah, I could have
Yeah,
predicted that
no
one.
question. But Switchfoot's a close second, I'd say.
What about you, Jake?
And for me, it's going to be Derek Webb. A little bit folky, a little bit weird. Kind of got that Radiohead edge. And I love what he's doing now. He's a strange guy, but I love him for it. This has been the Proof of Sound podcast. Thanks for listening. Respect the Blue Jay. See you later.
Respect the Blue Jay.